Good evening. Hello. Welcome to the Jaybefaunt channel. I am your host, James Fauntleroy. So good to see all of you here on this beautiful Thursday evening. Welcome. The Jaybefaunt channel is available on all major podcast platforms, so go ahead, subscribe to me there. I'm also part of the Revolutionary Blackout Network, so you can find me there on Sundays, Tuesdays, and Thursdays. Thank you so much for everybody joining me, as well as if you have not, you can also subscribe to my Substack. If you guys would like to get email notifications, those are the most reliable that you can get besides YouTube. Trust me, it's not as reliable on YouTube. Go ahead, subscribe to my Substack. You guys can go to jaybefaunt.substack.com so that you guys can also get the notifications whenever I go live or upload any type of clips. So thank you so very much to all who've already subscribed. As well as if you have not, and if you would like to, you can subscribe to my Ko-fi, my Patreon, or become a member. Thank you so very much, and shout out to all the patrons on Patreon, as well as Ko-fi and members, and anybody that sends me any type of mutual aid. That also helps me out very much and supports the channel. So thank you so very much to all of you. Okay, so this is a reading, but this is a live reading. So I'm going to say my hellos to everybody, and then we're going to get into the reading. As you guys know, I always go to the chat really quick just to say my salutations, to say my hellos to everybody that's in the chat. Right now, we have Wadi Pilgrim coming in saying, hey, everybody. And then we have Cobra Commander saying, Wadi Pilgrim. Thank you so very much. Good to see you guys in the chat today, as well as anybody else that may be in the Rockfin or Rumble side. Now, what are we going to be talking about tonight? Well, we're talking Assata Shakur. We are going to be doing the reading as we are going on to chapter 14 of Assata Shakur's autobiography. And when I read this chapter was really good because we're now back in at her point, Assata Shakur's modern time. So if you guys notice throughout this reading, it goes from a past Assata as her developing up as she develops, and then now we're going to modern Assata and what she's dealing with through the criminal justice system, especially the criminal justice system of New Jersey and New York, and as well as the federal criminal justice system. So now we're going to be seeing her engage with the federal criminal justice system and how she deals with that, how things go for her. And this is going to be a really interesting chapter. I cannot believe that look how much, this is how much I have left. This has been a great book. So if you guys have not, grab your snacks, grab your tea. I got mine. This tea is damn good. And it's still kind of hot. Woo. I made damn good tea. I don't care what nobody says. Oh, by the way, before I start reading, I just wanted to give a shout out to Colin from Indie News Network. I keep forgetting. So you guys may see this. This is a poster that that Colin from Indie News Network sent me. And it is a great quote, right? And this is a quote from Frederick Douglass. And when I was at the Marches for Medicare for All back in 2021, Frederick Douglass, I quoted Frederick Douglass's speech. And it says, if there's no struggle, there's no progress. It says, those who profess to favor freedom and yet depreciate agitation are men who want crops without plowing up the ground. They want rain without thunder and lightning. They want the ocean without the awful roar of its many waters. This struggle may be a moral one, or it may be a physical one, and it may be both moral and physical, but it must be a struggle. Power concedes nothing without it. The man, it never did and never will. And so that just, I had to put that, behind me. I'm thinking I'm going to move it a little bit more to the side just so that it gets more prominent. But I wanted to show you guys that as well. And shout out to Colin. Thank you so very much for that poster. I think I want to do more posters as well. from different quotes from different revolutionary leaders in history. So I think that'll be great. And it kind of coincides with power conceding nothing without a demand in regards to Assata Shakur. So thank you so very much for indulging me for a second. All right. So chapter 14 starts on page 208. 208. So we're going to start. You're the property of the feds now, one of the marshals told me like he really believed it. We're taking you to MCC, the federal prison, Manhattan Correctional Center, where you'll stay and you'll stand trial for bank robbery. It was January 5th, 1976, 15 days after I had been acquitted on the kidnapping charge in Brooklyn Supreme Court. I was still on Rikers Island. He busied himself tying me up with what seemed like an endless amount of chains and shackles. Another stupid-looking marshal told me how sorry he was to see me again. He said I'd given him hell the last time. I didn't even recognize him. He said he had worked on the last. He said he had worked on the last other bank robbery trial and had gotten chewed out because I got pregnant. You were framed, I told him. He looked at me all dumb, scratching his head. Yeah, that's right. I started to laugh. Even the other marshals started to crack up. It's not so funny, he said. I lost my commendation. That went down in my record. I laughed even harder. The only way I can describe MCC is modern gray with dabs of colored paint here and there. It's one of those ugly inner city fortress buildings, anti nature, anti human, and cold to all the senses. There was no fresh air because the entire building was air conditioned, and the only natural light came in from narrow glass slits in the side of the building and wired with alarms. The guards looked like space age robotons with blue blazers and gray pants, walkie talkies, and beepers. After I had been issued the standard uniform for women, a yellow jumpsuit and tennis shoes, I was led up to the women's section. To my absolute surprise, I was placed in the general population, given a key to my cage, and told that there was no lock-in time. Now, if you guys had been with me during this reading, or if you have read this autobiography, you know that Assata Shakur spent a lot of time in solitary or in her cell by herself. So this is a twist for her. So this is like, what? General population? For real? It's interesting. We were supposed to stand by the cell doors at various times of the day to be counted. The women's section was a relatively small area comprising of central area for eating and recreation, a TV room, and 3 split-level tiers. There were a few offices, 1 or 2 rooms that served as classrooms, and that was it. The only other place women could go once in a while was to the recreation on the roof, which was covered with huge metal anti-helicopter bars. Like a helicopter is actually going to drop down and, take them out of prison. Anyway, after spending more than a month in that confining little place, the women were climbing the walls, and I'm sure the men felt the same way. A few of the federal prisoners were big time with money and connections. They had been arrested for more sophisticated crimes than the average state prisoner, but the majority were poor, black, or third world, just like in the state jails. But just like in the street, money talks. A lot of the men on the honor floor, which was on the same floor as the women, had money. And rumor had it, they would send their favorite guards out to buy them Chinese or Italian food and send them to the Jewish delicatessen, depending on their mood. Interesting, right? One drug dealer made frequent visits to the women's section in the wee small hours for conjugal visits with his wife. A boom boom. Oh Lord. Jailhouse walls could talk. Mm. Since the men on the full honor floor had contact with the women, many tried to buy them by sending them huge quantities of commissary items. Man, the amount of ramen, of cup of noodles you can get. Others tried to impress the women with tall tales of how much they had ripped off or how big they were on the street. I was sitting on the bench with this white guy, waiting for them to take me to court one morning, and he was already. I mean, he was steady talking 1 and 2 million. Yeah, he was steady talking $1 and $2 million deals he had pulled off. He was some kind of con artist, busted for stock fraud. You shouldn't be here, I told him. You should be in the White House with all the other big time con artists. I was trying, he said. I was trying like hell. Interesting. There were two sisters who I knew from Rikers. I was really happy to see them both. Skeets was a strong stand-up sister who kept her mouth shut, minded her business, and didn't take any shit from anybody. She was a real warm-hearted person, generous and open, and maintained a whole lot of humanity, even though she was facing a hunk of time on a bank robbery case. I was shocked when I ran into Charlie, who I had known on Rikers as Charlene. She had changed completely. She was no longer the thin, round-faced young sister I had known on the Rock. It was as if she had aged overnight. She had written some dynamic poetry and had been part of our drama group. But this time she had been arrested for parole violation on a technicality and just didn't give a damn about anything anymore. She was bitter and tired, and her whole attitude can be summed up into two words that she frequently used: shove it. She told me that her freedom depended on whether or not she had passed the high school equivalency test. Everybody encouraged her to study, but she just didn't seem to care anymore. She was just tired of jumping through hoops and didn't give a damn about what happened. Just to stop there for a second. Her freedom depended on whether or not she passed the high school equivalency test. Does that sound just to you? That your freedom out of prison depended on whether you can pass high school or not? That doesn't sound just to me. Oh, and if you want to get out of prison, then you have to pass high school. As an adult, wow, man. It's crazy because if you think about it, it's like we will let you out of prison based on your ability to produce. Because basically what we all know is that modern school, especially, public school, is based on just teaching the ability to be producers in a capitalistic society. That's basically what it is. And if you can't pass that, then really you're good for nothing. Even though you can work, you don't have the proficiency that they need for you to be in the workforce, which basically means that you don't have the proficiency to be productive in their eyes. When in reality you do, it's just you don't want to you don't want to conform to the standards that they set. But then your freedom is contingent upon it. That doesn't make sense to me. It's unjust. So when I read that, I was like, what the hell? So yeah. I understood how she felt, but I hated to see her so bitter and so hurt and nowhere to go with it. Nothing positive to apply it to. I wanted to help her, but I didn't know how. And I was only going to be there for a hot minute. The only thing that perked her up was the struggle the women got into to improve medical care at the jail. At the time, the health situation was horrible. Women came in off the street and were given no physical exam, no tests, no nothing. They had trouble seeing gynecologists and having their most basic needs met, medical or otherwise. Since there was a tiny minority of the prison population, since we were a tiny minority of the prison population, our needs were ignored. The women got together and wrote complaints to the warden. Charlie was one of the women who worked the hardest to get better medical conditions. It's kind of ironic when I think about it now. A little more than a year later, I heard over the prison grapevine that Charlene had died from an undiagnosed cancer of the uterus. The Queens bank robbery trial, which I was here for, was one of the wildest trials I have ever went through. We had just finished with the Brooklyn kidnapping case, and I was not at all looking forward to going to trial again so soon. For almost 3 years now, Evelyn had worked on my cases continuously. She had quit her job as a professional in New York University Law School the day I was arrested on the turnpike to become my lawyer. One of the few cases she had accepted since my arrest, mostly to earn some money, was ready for trial, and she couldn't postpone it any longer. So I had to get someone else for my trial. Some of the brothers and sisters recommended Stanley Cohen to me. They said he was a good lawyer and would do a good job on this kind of case. I was hesitant because I had always had black lawyers representing me. I felt that they would probably be more understanding and more sensitive to the situation I was dealing with. I'm not talking about any old black lawyer because none of them make a whole lot of money and think like Richard Nixon. I'm sorry, because some of them make a whole lot of money and they think like Richard Nixon. I'm talking about those who are concerned with the plight of black people. I was especially sensitive to the issues after months of listening to some of the sisters at Rikers. They were so brainwashed, they thought that a white lawyer, any white lawyer, was better than a black lawyer. They also felt that the same way about white doctors, white dentists, white teachers, etc. I ain't going to court with no black lawyer, they say. I want me a white lawyer who's friendly with the judge and ain't going to make him mad. I tried to tell them that it didn't matter what color the lawyer was. If the lawyer went against the judge and really put up a fight for the client, the judge was going to get mad. Few, if any, black defendants have ever been freed because the judge liked the lawyer. If you had a dime for every time a judge and the defense lawyer sat down to lunch with some and discussed some black client rotting away in jail, you'd be able to stop working and live on the interest. I decided to talk with Cohen and see whether I thought he would be good for the case. Stanley was a middle-aged, Jewish, feisty-looking man, which somehow reminded me of W.C. Fields. He had a dramatic streak on him and could change the tone and mood in his voice from indignant to pleading in a matter of seconds. He had a long list of acquittals on his record and told funny stories about the strategies he used in this or that trial. He had once been a member of the Communist Party and continued to have progressive politics. Why do you like being a criminal lawyer? I asked him. How can you stand and fight in the court system knowing how much racism and injustice is involved? It was a loaded question, put out there to see how he would answer. I expected him to say something like, somebody had to do it, somebody had to make the sacrifice. I like to win, he said. I do it because I like to win. I liked him, and I decided I wanted him to defend me on the bank robbery case. Stanley sounds kind of cool. I'm just saying. Evelyn gave Stanley the transcripts from the time I was beaten up in court by the U.S. Marshals trying to photograph me, together with all the other documents in her file, and worked with him on his trial strategy. Andrew Jackson had pled guilty, so I was on trial alone. Everything was rush, rush, rush. The railroad train was whistling, and it could hardly wait to take me up the river. The new judge assigned to the case, wanted the case over with, and he wanted it over with fast. We wanted to question we wanted to question the prospective jurors about their opinions, what they had seen and heard in the media, etc. The judge was determined to not have a long voir dire, and so we compromised. A questionnaire was made up asking some of the questions we submitted and others that the prosecutor submitted. After we after we went through the answers, we were to pick or eliminate jurors, asking additional questions as needed. Some of the answers were so contradictory and such a study on the level of racism in America that it would take a book just to report on them. In 100% of the cases, we were able to tell whether the prospective juror was black, white, or other just by reading the answers. Okay, some of y'all are going to laugh. Some of y'all may not. Who knows? But there's times where I can actually talk to somebody on the phone and tell if they're black. It's funny, but it's true. I can sometimes, I'd say with 65% accuracy, I can tell it's, no, 75% accuracy. 75% accuracy, I can actually tell if the person I'm talking to on the phone is black or white. Yep. There's a lot of black people that can do that. We can tell. I don't know what it is. I don't know what it is, but we can tell. Now, sometimes we can't. It depends. But because some of us, we can code switch, we can tell. So that's why what she said here didn't surprise me. The trial had a lighthearted feel to it. Everyone had kind of decided that we would enjoy the fight, and fight as hard as we could, without worrying about whether we were going to win or lose. I didn't think that there was a single one of us, with the possible exception of Assata Shakur. Assata Shakur is Tupac Shakur's mother, who really thought we were going to win. Assata, who was working as a legal assistant, kept telling me, "We're going to win this one, Assata." But I sure as hell didn't believe it. They had taken a bank picture of the woman robbing the bank, printed my name under it as being positively identified, and then placed that picture in the newspapers, subway stations, and I think even on the sides of buses. They had this picture posted in every bank in New York. There was not a person in New York who went to the bank, rode the subway, or walked the streets who had not seen that photograph with my name printed under it 1,000 times. There was no way of even counting how many times that picture had been flashed on television, with the announcer calling out my name. The public had been so saturated with that image that I felt it was crazy to take this trial seriously. After Stanley was familiar with some of the facts, I had asked him what he thought of my chances were. I'd be lying if I told you that they look good. In reality, they look pretty lousy. But I believe you, and I'm going to fight for you. And believe me, I like to fight. We agreed that I would act as co-counsel on the case. "You're a lousy lawyer," he would tell me every time we got into an argument over some strategy. "But you're better than a lot of lawyers I know who passed the bar." The atmosphere was electric. The courtroom was packed every day with sisters and brothers who had come to watch the circus. I couldn't stop staring. I have always said that the best thing about being on trial is getting to see and smile at the spectators. Seeing so many beautiful people in the courtroom gave us the push we needed to get down and take care of business. I felt that way during all of my trials, but this trial had an atmosphere that made it even more special. People from all over the Black community dropped by. The Muslim sisters and brothers brought their prayer rugs and broke out into prayer in the hallway of the courthouse. People brought their children, explaining what was happening. One little girl broke up the whole courtroom when she asked out loud, "Is this the fascist pig, Mommy?" pointing at the judge. I was waiting for that one. Cheers, little girl. Cheers. Is that the fascist pig, mommy? I can see a little girl with pigtails pointing up in a bright yellow dress with the frilly socks on, just pointing up. Is that the fascist pig, mommy? Look, bruh. God, I wish you did that to a cop. Cheers to that little girl. She's an adult now. Probably close to 50 years old. Whoever you are. It was as if the black folks had just taken over the courtroom, letting everybody know that they were watching what was going down. The first thing we did was ask for a lineup. The way they had been identified was from a photo. The FBI selected my photograph from the militant casebook. This book contained the photographs of all the militants the FBI wanted to send to prison. After they had gotten my photograph out of the militant casebook, they put it in with a few other photographs of women. Of course, mine, a mugshot, was the only one with numbers across the front of it. The rest were normal. The FBI then showed this to a group of sit pictures to the robbery witnesses and asked them to identify someone who somewhat resembled or bore a likeness to the woman who robbed the bank. Two of the people who were in the bank signed affidavits saying that the photograph with the numbers across it, my mugshot, looked somewhat like the woman. The rest, who had been in the bank at the time the robbery was made, no such identification. We told the judge we wanted a lineup because we thought the initial identification of me as the bank robber was a suggestive and tainted. But before the judge had arranged for the lineup, the prosecutor called one of the so-called witnesses to testify. Since I was the only black woman sitting in the defendant's chair, of course, he identified me. We protested the procedure, but the judge admitted his testimony anyway. We finally did arrange for a lineup. And of course, the other so-called witnesses picked out another woman. Since the photo identification part of the case was based on nothing more than all niggers look alike, the FBI tried to use scientific evidence to gain a conviction. Their plan to superimpose the bank surveillance photo over my photograph failed because they had only had one photo of me that was taken at the time and same angle as the bank robbery picture. It was one of the photographs taken when they assaulted me in the courtroom before the trial began, and I refused to let them take my picture. The FBI had blocked out the faces and hands of the marshals and the FBI agents choking and assaulting me. They had cropped the picture so that only the thing that the jury could see was my face, but my facial expression in the photograph was one in such agony that it was hard for them to convince the jury of anything else. So the FBI came up with a brilliant idea. They brought in some dude from the FBI who said he was an expert on identifying photographs and examining them under a microscope. He was a real pro, slick as grease. He had charts and diagrams and whatnot, and I was worried to death that the jury would go for that crap. He sounded real good until it came time for cross-examination. It turned out that he was a specialist in paleontology and had spent a lot of time studying rocks. He tried to claim that his expertise at examining rocks made him able to identify people. Under cross-examination, all his carefully constructed expertise turned into a pile of rocks. This new technical breakthrough in crime fighting proved to be nothing but a fraud, because the prosecution had been allowed to introduce this new scientific evidence. The judge said we had the right to find a photographic expert to rebut the testimony. Since I didn't have a dime, the court agreed to pay for it. The day our photograph expert testified, I slumped down in the seat. He was a real straight-looking white guy who looked like he subscribed to Reader's Digest. But the guy had credentials in photography a mile long. And you can tell from the way he talked that he loved photography and that he was incensed over what the FBI was trying to do. He explained to the jury that the chemical process of photography and what the FBI agent said was absolutely impossible. He said that if you look at photographs under a microscope, all you will see is little dots. His testimony was so correct and his facts so together that the prosecutor barely bothered to cross-examine him. Look, I'm telling you right now, that FBI agent, they made him kick rocks. Oh, gosh. Oh, my gosh. That's crazy. See what the state will resort to in order to put people in jail? This is why there's times where they'll be like, oh, intelligence agencies say blah, 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 blah. And it's like, no, if they are willing to get a paleontologist to try to come off as a photographer expert, you don't think they don't do some nefarious stuff just to get a conviction? Or just to put something out there? Look, remember the Twitter files and how they were intervening in censoring people. That's against the First Amendment. So yeah, if they're willing to violate the First Amendment, if they're willing to violate people's rights in court cases, it ain't worth it, baby. The crapper came when the manager of the bank came forward to testify in my behalf. He said that I was definitely not the woman who robbed the bank, and that the robber was a different height and different weight from mine. We could see the prosecutor quietly creep under his table. The last hope was the summation. In his closing statement, he tried to make up for everything he had not proved with the evidence. He painted me as an evil, conniving monster. He told the jury that I was hiding the fact that I had big, fat arms, and that the woman who was shown robbing the bank, that I was concealing my arms because I had not worn a sleeveless dress in court. The trial was held in the middle of January. As he was talking, I politely rolled up my sleeves right there in the courtroom, exposing my very thin arms. When he got to the final part of his closing, he grew strangely confident. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, this woman is very clever, very conniving. She has tried to deceive this jury in every way. But she made one mistake, ladies and gentlemen. She made one fatal error. He then held up a picture of the woman robbing the bank, and in the other hand, he held up my mugshot in one picture. She made one mistake, he kept repeating. She forgot to change her earrings. She had the same earrings on. He got her? Did he get her? Wait for it. Wait for it. Wait for it. The prosecutor was so dramatic. The scene was straight out of the movies. You can tell he had been watching The Late Show. Both the women in the bank and I had on hoop earrings. When Stanley summed up, he just said, will all the women in the courtroom who have on hoop earrings please stand up? Half the women rose to their feet. Ha! Got him! While the jury was out deliberating, I paced back and forth in the holding pen. They're going to convict me anyway, I told Afeni. They probably weren't even listening. That jury isn't going to convict you, Assata, Afeni replied. Didn't you see the faces of those jurors, especially the black ones? It was true. I had seen them look at me differently after the truth started coming out. And I knew that the black jurors in the deliberating room would make all the difference in the world. If nothing else, they remind some of the more racist whites that black people are human beings. It's a shame that too many black people try to avoid jury duty instead of trying to slow down the railroad. A lot of times it's a matter of simple economics. Black people often feel they can't afford to sit on a jury, that the money that they would lose would mean sacrifice for their family. This is why some people don't want to serve jury duty, because the time and resources that it would take away from feeding their families and themselves. This is why when some of us have jury duty, we're like, damn. And we try to get out of it because it's never worth it. The time, the compensation is not worth it. Sometimes we'll actually lose money going for jury duty rather than actually making, at least breaking even. So a lot of black people, because economically we're disadvantaged, we just say, no, we get out of it. And they are probably right. But their sitting on a jury might mean that their neighbor's son or daughter doesn't end up frying in the electric chair or rotting away behind bars. A verdict has been reached. I could tell what it was before we even entered the courtroom. The pigs were upset, to put it mildly. The jury read the verdict. Acquittal. The courtroom broke into loud cheer. The judge just gave up calling for order. He had to wait for the shouting to die down. It was a long time coming. All the spectators were jumping around, hugging each other. The marshals let me out of the courtroom and handcuffed me. They brought me back to Rikers Island, where I was put into solitary confinement. That's chapter 14. That's it. Interesting, right? I'm telling you, boy. Yeah. So just goes to show how, even in the federal court system, we face so much barriers, especially when it comes to white supremacy and things like that. So I honestly, I wasn't expecting that when I read it. I was expecting, them to put another strike against her. But this time she got acquitted. So federally, she was not guilty. Because they tried to get her, because the FBI tried to literally get her off of a picture of another black woman. It's basically, they tried to get her under the premise, all of us look the same. That's like trying to get CJ for murder when I was the one that actually did it. Or that's like trying to get CJ for robbery and I was the one that actually robbed the bank. Really? How many people are going to confuse Rome with me? He's better looking anyway. Come on now. Have you seen comparison to me and Rome? It's like night and day. Look. Wait. Look. Rome is this spoon. I'm this mug. What? Can you guys, people, really? So, and they're trying to do the same thing with Assata Shakur. Good Lord. These people, I'm telling you, man, they be trying to throw everything at the wall to see if it sticks. This is why the system needs to change. Because I don't know if I've ever heard anybody ever say this before, but I think this is true. The FBI is the federal law enforcement arm for corporations. Now, they will have to do some sacrificial lambs once in a while, but for the most part, no, they're the law enforcement arm, the federal law enforcement arm for corporations. The CIA is the federal intelligence arm of corporations. Because ultimately, who are their managers? Congress, Senate, presidency, Supreme Court. That is their middle managers. And they do the bidding of the big boss. That's who they are. So when people talk about, oh, the government actually works for us. No. In fact, while I'm at it, let me show you guys this. I've showed this before many times, but just to solidify what I've been telling you, this is how the process is. This is how it works. Let me show you. Savvy Sav, she actually showed this before. It says feudalism then and now, medieval feudalism versus corporate feudalism. The elected officials, presidents, MPs, representatives, you can also put this under the Supreme Court. You can put this under senators, representatives. They're the middlemen. That's all they are. They're the middlemen, right? They're the middle managers. Once you get to the central bankers, that's the people at the top, right? Corporate elite, big bankers, central bankers, they are the people at the top. This is the people who own and are CEOs of places like Vanguard, BlackRock, State Street. They don't actually want their name in the news. These are the people who are over the Federal Reserve, the IMF, World Bank. You know what I mean? It's those people. So just so that you guys know, that's how ultimately it works. And so who is the arm of the federal government that does their bidding? Their federal muscle. You have federal muscle, state muscle, county muscle, and city muscle. And they're all cops. That's basically what they are. So, yeah. Anywho, I just want to thank you guys for tuning in. Let me go to the chat really quick. For some reason, I feel like I'm in just like a regular recording, but I'm actually live. But the Jam Mom is in the chat. Good to see you, the Jam Mom. Peace to you. Bryce Smith is also in here. Good to see you, Bryce. All right, we have HDLZ says, thank you for the reading, JB. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you. All right. And let me check on the rock side. Okay, we're good. Okay. But thanks a lot, guys, for tuning in. And if you guys have not, please make sure to like the stream on your way out. As well as thank you so much to everybody. If you have not already, then you guys can subscribe to my Substack. You guys can go to jaybefaunt.substack.com. If you guys would like to get email notifications, remember those email notifications from me are more reliable than the ones on YouTube. So go ahead and subscribe to my Substack. Also, a big, massive, huge, gargantuan thank you to all the patrons on Patreon, Coffee, as well as members, and anybody that sends me any type of mutual aid. But without you guys, this channel would not be possible. So thank you so very much from the big, heavy top of my heart to the big, bulbish, bulbaceous bottom of my heart. Thank you so much. And I made that sound very sexual. Yikes. I'm so stupid. Why the hell do you guys watch this show? Anywho, thank you so very much. Look, I like to tell you guys to water your plants, water yourselves, leave the world better than you found it. Reading is fundamental, people. Also, I'll be getting into Laziness Does Not Exist by Dr. Devon Price. I'll probably be getting into it over the weekend because I gotta make sure I do that. But also just want to remind you guys, this Saturday, RBN is going to be having the Labor Summit. So we're going to be having the Labor Summit. I hope you guys are able to tune in. I think it starts at 10 a.m. Yeah, 10 a.m. on Saturday. And so we'll be doing that summit. I'll be doing a panel on disabled workers. So, and I'll have a guest with me to talk about disabled workers during that summit, because I think that's also very important. We're going to have people like Shama Sawant joining us from Worker Strike Back. And from what I know Christian Smalls is going to be from the Amazon Labor Union is also going to be joining us as well. So that's going to be a really interesting summit to have. And I'm excited, so I can't wait to see you guys there. We're also going to be having some people on the ground actually talking to workers, rank and file workers throughout, the country to talk to them about labor as well, and why we need to build class consciousness within our country between many different types of people so that we can actually change this nation for the better. So thank you so very much for all of you for tuning in. Boy, oh boy, it's been a really good one. So, oh yeah, and smoke him if you got him, drink him if you got him. If you ain't got him, then watch something funny, laugh, have a chuckle, because joy is revolutionary. Don't worry, I didn't forget. Mwah, forehead kisses to every single one of you, because you matter to me. Goodbye. Oh, and by the way, take everything that the government says with a grain of salt, because you and I both know that they're really just managers for the corporations. So, yeah. Research over me search, as George Lee says, Professor Lee. Anyway, second forehead kiss. You didn't know I was going to do that. You didn't know I was going to do that. I